and I would like to welcome you to the November 17th, 2022 Design Review Committee meeting. This is a 9-person committee whose primary function is to perform design review for projects located in one of the city's 3 designated design review areas: downtown, the riverfront, and the new hotel overlay zoning district. This is a mandatory review, voluntary compliance process with one exception, and that's for hotels seeking to skip council review. Hotels taking advantage of this incentive must receive a positive recommendation from the committee. All committee members and staff are now participating in person. We are streaming live on our virtual engagement hub, which is accessible through the virtual engagement hub link on the front page of the city website and also linked on the committee page. You can also watch the meeting on the city's YouTube channel, either live or recorded. I will now take roll call. Vice Chair Jeremy Goldstein.
Here.
Kate and Kaya.
Here.
Christina Boer.
Here.
Kimberly Hunter is not here today. Stephen Lee Johnson.
Here.
Thomas McLaughlin.
Here.
Brian Moffitt is not here today, and Ricardo Sejo is not here today. Okay, we have a quorum. We have 6, so that's good for voting, and we will now continue with the agenda. First, we will move on to the administrative approval of the minutes from the October 2022 meeting. Did everybody get a chance to look at the action items?
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
All right. Everyone in favor, raise hand, say aye. Which do you prefer? Oh, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Everyone opposing? Okay. That we will move on to the new business. For formal design review, we have one item on the agenda, and that is 102 North Lexington Avenue. And I will leave it with Alex.
Thank you, Chair Raines and members of the committee. I'm going to try to pull up a presentation really quickly, so give me just a second. Let's see. Will, can you help me figure out
I think
which?
it's the middle one. So process elimination. One more time. Try the Chrome button, and then do the middle one. Elevations. Yep, and then the presentation.
Okay,
on
got
the
it.
other tab.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
Yep.
I do know some of you, but obviously have not met many of you in person. My name is Alex Cole. I am the Historic Preservation Planner for our department, and so I am kind of stepping in here and there to help Will when we're looking at existing contributing structures in downtown and the River District. So that's why I'm here to talk to you today. So this proposal is for modification of an existing early 20th century contributing building on Lexington Avenue. I just included a couple of photos here. On the top left is Google Street View from 2019, where you can see the storefront on the left side of the building, whereas in the more recent 2022 Google Street View, it's obviously you can't see much because of the tree, but it's also boarded up on the left-hand side. So as you can see, the first floor has been modified at some point in the past, but there are existing transom windows and plate glass windows with the original wood framing. And then on the second story of the front facade are the original 6/6 wood windows are still present in the building. So I did note, the only concerns I noted in my staff report were really related to those particular features, since the standard or guidelines recommend retaining original storefront and wood or window features whenever that's possible. So those were just some items to note to you all on the front facade. The second story windows are also proposed for replacement. Will and I met with the architect earlier this week to talk through our concerns and just offer that, you know, perhaps there might be a better way to treat the first floor a little bit more sensitively. If there was, I know they need egress on each side because it's 2 spaces on the interior, so we understand that, and you know, understand that it's, you know, potentially has to be fully modified on the first floor to accommodate their programming, but we just asked that they consider if they had any other options. And then the architect also let us know that she would talk with our clients about retaining the second story windows if they were interested in doing that. And then the second slide just shows the other elevations to be modified. I'm not going to spend much time on this because they're not character defining elevations. The side elevation is the top, and they're just proposing to replace some windows there and fill in an opening. And then there will be some changes to the rear of the building too, and they are adding a new parapet wall that will wrap the back and sides of the building to correct drainage for the roofing structure. So not noting any concerns or thoughts on those proposed changes, just the front facade. So that's really the summary of my information to share with you, but I'm happy to answer questions if you have any.
Anybody have any questions?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
The applicant's also here if you have questions for them, or if you want to invite them to share any more information as well.
Does anybody have any questions for the applicant? Okay, well, if we don't have any questions, do we have any motions?
I move that we accept and recommend approval of the project that's being presented, and I guess the address, I need to state the address, but
It's 102.
102 Lexington.
Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those against, say nay. All right, the project is approved. Item B on the new business has been continued to December 15th.
You can make a motion and a vote to continue that.
Oh,
You can make a-
okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Make a motion to continue?
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, the item B will be continued to December 15th, Design Review Committee meeting. Next on the agenda, we have new business informal design review. And the first project is 159 Riverside Drive. It's a mixed-use development.
So, yeah, do you want to walk through this? Okay. Yeah, it might be, I have the plans up. I don't know if you wanted to walk through it and present on what you're proposing, or what would be the...
Once you start.
Okay, okay, sure. So, this informal review for project 159 Riverside Drive is a previously approved project that this committee reviewed back in June of 2021. It also received a conditional zoning approval for the project. So I have a number of items available for us to review, including site plans and elevations. Essentially, the project included a new multifamily building and the preservation of the historic mill and smokestack building. So just some background about the project itself. Actually, that's the landscape plan. Just want to give you some a little more context here.
Well, do we have access to those?
So in the documents folder, most of these things should be submitted. I don't believe the previous approval plans were in there, but I can provide access to that, perhaps. Trying to think of the best way of doing that. Yeah, this is the previously approved plans that were reviewed back in June of 2021. If you actually go to that folder for June 6, 2021, it should be available under that review item as well. We do have more information that shows the comparison of that approval versus what's being proposed now as well. So we'll have a little bit more to share. So essentially, the new building is a 5-story tall building. max height of 70 feet. I'm trying to find the number of units. Do you know the total number of units, Peter, of residential units? Was it 135 residential units? So essentially, as this project has progressed, let's see here, I have some renderings that give some color of what was approved before. Sorry, it appears a little slow. So you can kind of get a sense of the new proposed building to the south and page right here, and then the preserved mill building with a new upper story addition, and then the smokestack behind it. Kind of a further view of that.
These are the old ones.
These are the old plans, yep.
So the only change that we're discussing right now is for the mill building?
That is correct, yep. So throughout the project's progression, basically, let me go to this other one. It was discovered that the mill building is not structurally sound, and due to issues with the foundation and mortar and other technical aspects of the building itself, it will have to be reconstructed. So the proposal, which meets the project condition and the conditional zoning, that the project be adaptively reused. So they're proposing to rebuild it using the same materials as existing, but take the opportunity to modify a little bit of the openings on the ground level, and also have a taller addition at the top. So here you can kind of see the old approved version at the top, which I believe was 28 feet in overall height, and then this newer design that they're proposing, which is a total of 38 feet in height. You can see a little bit better on this exhibit what's being proposed as far as that goes. And like I said, some of the openings are already proposed to be modified through the initial review. So the fact that they're kind of modifying what was proposed would still be changing what's there currently in the historic building. But we want to take the opportunity to bring it back to you all to get any feedback about the rebuilding of the building using established materials, and also this kind of taller element above the building. And at that point, going forward, staff working with our department director, who has the discretion to approve minor modifications to conditional zonings, will determine whether this meets that qualification, or if the changes would require an amendment to the actual conditional zoning itself, which would require going back to City Council. But this is a good first stop to kind of get your feedback about what's being proposed as far as the rebuild goes, and also a taller upper story level on that building. So have some renderings, those elevation drawings as well.
Can you do the comparison again, please?
Yeah. It's hard to zoom in much more, lose them both. But so you can kind of see that the prior proof one kind of had an angular slope to the existing building, and had a kind of a shorter, lower addition on top, and the new one is 10 feet taller, so it's definitely a larger structure on top, and has a flat kind of border between the old and the new. Did I miss anything, Peter? Is there anything you want to add? Yeah. You want to? Feel free to. I don't know if you want a specific exhibit up, or.
No, you can leave that up.
Okay. Oh, great. Yeah. Sounds
Just the
good.
left-hand side, that little zone on the left. We can talk about changing.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Peter Alberese. I'm a director with MHA Works and head of the Asheville office. I'm also the project architect for 159 Riverside Drive. This project we've been working on since the latter part of 2021. And when we were engaged in the project, it was right about the time when it was scheduled to go to Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council. There's several things I'd like to talk about here that we hope will justify approval of this change. One is that the D1 conditions and in the negotiations with City Council, the client agreed to put a green roof on the mill building, which we are intending to do. The other condition was that we would not take down the smokestack, that is going to be retained. That is not part of what we're asking for to be demolished and rebuilt. It's just the mill building itself. The intention of the design all along, and we have that in documents that were submitted to us for our request for proposals to the client, included a full 3 stories in the mill building. Now, one could argue that the original design had a short top floor. It's debatable as to what that really means in that elevation. But as we got into the detailing of the project and looked at what was in our proposal back to the client, they clearly wanted 3 levels. One at the street level, one at what we're calling the first level, which is where the bridge is that provides handicap accessibility to the main building. And then a second level in the mill building that would be multifunction space to be determined by the owner at some point. It's intended to be an assembly occupancy with for different types of events. So that what we proceeded with in the design of the project meets the intention of what the client had asked us to design and what City Council had approved. The only difference here is adaptive reuse with the definition of that and the height. Now, the height of the building, aside from the fact that we needed the height just for the space, it's in the flood zone, and we can't have any elevator equipment below the first floor. So we're making all the machine room-less elevator equipment has to be up on the top floor. And what we wanted to do, because we've committed to putting a green roof on the building, we didn't want to have an elevator penthouse popping up through the green roof and having an obstruction that would be viewed from the neighbors behind down onto the roof as we feel that would be a negative. And what you're seeing in the image right now, that's not the penthouse, that's just the access hatch to get up to the roof to maintain it. And I'll, if you give me a minute, I have paper copies of the
Will, what are we doing here today? It says informal review. We're just listening?
In providing any feedback or concerns or in asking questions.
But is there any formal, does it have to come back in a formal review or anything? Or is this just to say, hey, we sent it back and they informally gave some comments? What's the process?
We could recommend that it comes back for formal review depending on the feedback it gets today and once we look at it more closely at a staff level. So if it needed a amendment to the conditional zoning, it would come back formally. If you all were generally comfortable with it and staff determined it could be a minor modification to the conditional zoning, then it wouldn't necessarily have to come back.
what we would prefer, we're respectfully requesting that we provide the information to you as to why the design was changed. The design is changed for a variety of reasons. The existing building is not structurally stable. A lot of the foundations have been eroded, and from a life safety standpoint, there's absolutely no way we could rebuild the building in place safely. And that has been documented in an engineering study that we provided Will's department several weeks ago. And we also have some testing that's been done. We have the engineering report. Again, it's in the floodway. The building had to roof had to be raised up in order to accommodate space for the elevator equipment that has to be above the cab on the top floor. We're trying to eliminate any type of protrusion on the roof so that the green roof has a very clean look to it from Chicken Hill. People looking back down on the roof aren't going to see a penthouse or any other equipment up there. We feel that it substantially meets the intention of adaptive reuse, as that's what we're doing. We're reusing the masonry material. I've done a lot of research on brick, and I'd like to share this with you, if you would. In the early part of the 20th century, when brick were manufactured, it's not controlled like it is now. Bricks were basically raw shapes from clay, and they were put in a kiln, and the source of the heat was at one side of the pile of, or the stack of bricks. The bricks closest to the fire were too burned to be used, so they were cast aside. The second row of bricks were considered the veneer brick, and the other rows of bricks behind it were fired, and they became over a pink color, and they're referred to as salmon brick. So in this building, we have exterior brick on the outside that is typical of that era, and then at least 2 to 3 layers of salmon brick on the inside that was the interior finish of the building. What we're planning on doing, and what I'm specifying, is that the brick be carefully dismantled and sorted and cleaned by type, so that the exterior brick will be on a series of pallets that will be reused for the exterior, the reconstruction. The salmon brick will be stacked, sorted, stacked, and cleaned, and be used for the interior part of the construction. And the wall itself, the interior structure part of the wall, will be 8-inch concrete masonry, which will not be seen. So there'll be a brick on the outside, concrete masonry to provide the structure to support the window system above, and then the existing interior brick or salmon brick would be the interior surface of the building. The footprint of the new building is going to be within inches of the exact footprint of the old building. The connection between the old building and the smokestack, which was part of the flue assembly, we're hoping that we can salvage that and not take it down. We're not going to be doing anything to the chimney other than repointing the brick. The geometry, if you look at the original drawing where it's sloped, that is what the original roof profile was. What we feel is during the demolition and removal and sorting of the brick, we're probably going to lose some of the exterior veneer brick. They won't be usable. So what we're proposing is the angle be shifted down so that it's flat, and with the assumption that there'll be some brick that we will not be able to, to use. We don't feel that's a substantial change in the overall design of the project, that it's in keeping with what the original intent was. So that's an overview of where and how we've come to this proposal, and why we feel it's justified, is because it substantially meets the intent of the original design. And the reason we're doing it's not because, it's just because it's an unstable building, and for everyone's sake, general public, all of us, that we feel that it's prudent to take it down and rebuild it. What we would like, and respectfully requesting, that this design review committee approve this today so that we can complete our construction drawings and move forward. And if there's anything that's an issue that requires further study, I'd like to be able to discuss that today, and if required, come up with a solution while we're here.
Peter, are you using new brick too?
No, not using any.
Assuming that
we're using all the old brick. If we use any new brick, it will be unseen.
Okay.
That's the intention. Now, Robin, it may be we start taking this apart, and if the whole thing falls apart, like Michelle's building on,
Right.
they just is a big pile of powder.
Yeah.
But I'm working on specifications right now, and I have, this is kind of a weighty document here, but it's from the Brick Institute of America on how to work with salvage brick, how to take it apart, how to clean it, how to reinstall it. And we're using this as part of the specification that the contractor will be bound to follow.
Are it looks like in the original rendering, the windows, the fenestration on both buildings is similar to dark. And then in the new rendering, they both look white. Do they still, are you still using the same materials for the windows? Same look? For
Yeah, the difference is that as we work through the articulation of the overall design concept of the building was to have it look like an old industrial building. That's why there are more mullions in the new design than in the original one. But it's not going to be reflective glass or mirror glass or anything like that. It'll be an two-layer insulating glass.
So I'm not the designer. Love your design, by the way.
Okay, all right, thanks, Jeremy.
I think it's a great building, and I have zero problem with, the height differential. For me, as the non-designer, I'm more concerned with looking at if these conditions are the conditions that were ultimately passed. Number 17 says, "The building design, site design, and orientation must substantially comply with the approved site plan and elevation," which I think you meet, or can meet with staff modification. The only thing that concerns me is it specifically says adaptive reuse of the remaining historic cotton mill building and smokestack. And again, I think what you're doing is fine, but it's not being adaptively reused. It's being taken down and rebuilt. And if staff's okay with setting that precedent going forward and allowing other people to do the same thing in future conditional zones, then so be it. But be prepared to support that in the future, is all I would think. Because otherwise, go back and get council to say this is fine. Otherwise, you're opening up a can of worms. Plus, with the modification, I've dealt with a number of projects where the code specifically states that they have the right to modify on a staff level. And then I'm told on different projects that the city attorney is telling us we're not allowed to use that power. So if you're going to use it, be prepared to use it for everybody, not just in this instance.
Sure, I absolutely agree. Regarding the adaptive reuse, I think one thing we've maybe learned from this is that we need to be more explicit in stating the exact type of historic preservation for projects like this. So, I think this is kind of vague, which helps the applicant to pursue what they're looking to modify. But in the future, if staff and the public and the applicant, really felt strongly about the preservation of a building, you would probably be more clear in that language. So going forward, we can adjust our language on future projects like this to be more clear about what we're suggesting. And in this case, staff felt that the language was kind of broad enough to allow the rebuilding of the building with salvage materials in this case.
What's the definition of adaptive reuse?
I think sorry.
No, please, yeah.
In terms of the engineering report, I think that's what we use to say, hey, this building can't structurally be used the way that it is.
That's a different issue. Adaptive reuse refers to the process of reusing an existing building for a purpose other than which it was originally built or designed. It doesn't say take it apart and rebuild it and make it look like it. Again, I have no problem personally. I'm just saying I'm just one opinion. So.
Jeremy, I think the way to look at this is up until, when did we first start talking about this? Maybe a month ago, 5 weeks ago. We had assumed from prior engineering studies that we could keep the original building. We're going to build a brand-new steel structure within it and brace the existing structure back to the steel. When we got into actually having an engineering a test report done of the existing foundation, which unfortunately, due to the way testing labs are running now, they're so far behind in all this type of testing. That was the quickest we were able to get that information. As the day we've received that information, that's when we said, look, we need to revisit this, because there's no way that as designers, from a liability standpoint, in our, the due diligence that we're required to do to protect health, safety, and welfare of the public, that we could rebuild it in its existing condition. So I think that I know from our standpoint, our firm's standpoint, is that we can't go in and rebuild this building as it is right now. It's not going to be safe for anyone, not only to be in it when it's finished, but to work on it when it's under construction. So I think, Jeremy, to your point about a future situation where this may come up, I think it'll need to be taken on a case-by-case basis, because all existing rehabilitation projects, they're all different.
I think that kind of the lessons learned aspect of this is interesting and important. And going forward, I know that everybody's going to be aware of the challenges with trying to do adaptive reuse. I think that the new design here definitely, to me, meets the spirit, I think, of what the city's intent was, because it basically is the same footprint and it's reusing the brick material. I think that if this were, in a historic district and there were other buildings that were a part of the district, we've all been to Charleston, and we've seen these houses that basically were falling in, that were being supported and held up at an amazing expense in order to maintain the facade. I think if we were in something like that, again, we'd be in a different situation. But Peter, like you said, I think every project, every site is different. I actually think the new design is going to be more exciting. When you're on the Greenway down there looking at it, to me it looks better than what was originally intended. So I think it's, I'm going to recommend approval.
I guess I kind of disagree with Stephen Lee a little bit. I think it's going to work, but I will say I do think it's unfortunate to lose the angle on the brick. I think that's kind of the look of the old building, and so if you're rebuilding it to look the same, you're kind of losing the most iconic part of the original structure. But I think it's just my opinion. I think the design in general is pretty. Looks like it's going to be nice.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the height change. I think it meets the spirit of the intention. If I were going to nitpick, I prefer the solid to opacity ratio in the first option more than the second, but I understand why. You can't be guaranteed how many bricks you're going to have. It's not, yeah, that's why I asked if you were using new bricks at all. But I don't think it's the height is not a huge enough change to have a problem with, for me. Kate, Thomas, do you guys have any thoughts?
I think it looks really nice.
I don't have any thoughts. I just, I'm not working on this project, but I think that you've talked to some people in my office, so if this is informal review, I just don't know if we're voting or what.
I don't think we're voting.
Yeah, we have to
Okay.
vote on it informally.
Okay, I thought, I heard that earlier, but.
Yeah,
okay.
there's going to be no vote on this item today. If there is the appearance of a conflict, I would probably just recuse yourself or just not provide any feedback in the informal setting, just to be on the safe side.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Quick question. Did I hear correct that council, as a condition of approval, required the green roof on the existing building?
That was as I understand it, and again, our firm wasn't involved in the entitlement portion of the project, but I think that was something that the client offered to council as part of the conditional zoning.
Okay.
So that's where, we're happily committed to doing that. We like green roofs. I mean,
Yeah, number
there's-
13, multiple green features, a green roof over the mill building,
Mhm.
approximately 2,000 square feet. Underground, and it lists. That's my only feedback. It just says adaptive reuse of these remaining. It should have said, subject to, structural integrity. I'm not a mind reader. I don't know if they care that much, if this was a big part of the approval or not. We really want that there. But I just know what it says.
Yeah, I think, like I said, going forward, we'll be more clear and intentional in that language, and for now, it's broad enough to be interpreted that it could be rebuilt on site, and I guess the reality being that regardless of what would happen going forward, that building's not going to be kept in its current situation in any case. So I think trying to make the best of it is logical.
So
What do you need?
what do, I need something
What do you need for
to,
us to
Yeah.
say?
Just, whenever you're done giving feedback, we can move on to the next item. There's nothing formal at this stage.
Yeah,
okay, well, I just need to have something that's affirmative to take back to the client, they're
Well,
not
we'll-
here,
we'll-
so.
We all
Huddle
like the
it.
design. The
Yeah.
only question
Yeah.
is from one person who says, I think it's not broad at all. It says you have to adaptively reuse the building.
Okay.
I don't think that's broad. I think that's the mistake, but. it's
Okay,
up
so-
to me.
So, just so I understand where we are right now, because I want everyone to be perfectly clear, we can proceed with the way we are right now. We don't have to bring this back for any further review.
I'll need to check with our director, since he's the one that authors minor modifications to the conditional zoning.
Okay,
But this conversation has been helpful in that no additional hurdles have been identified that would be an issue as far as we can tell. So we'll huddle up and get back to you to be clear on that for sure.
Okay.
But I think this discussion has been helpful to understand and get feedback from the committee that they're generally okay with the new design. So that'll weigh into our thinking as well.
okay, and obviously Todd's seen these drawings, the proposal, and,
He
okay,
suggested waiting until this meeting and then airing on their feedback and then getting back on to you about how to proceed. So, yeah.
okay, all right,
Yep.
so we're still, we've gone over this hurdle, but we
Yes.
still have one more to,
Still in limbo a little bit, but
Okay.
hopefully early next week we can all get together and figure out what the
Okay.
right path forward is. So,
okay, it would be great if we could hear something before everyone breaks for Thanksgiving.
that should be possible. Todd is out today and tomorrow, so I can get with him first thing next week and get back to you, before Thanksgiving, I think is reasonable.
Okay, all right, well, thank you all very much.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks, Peter.
Okay, next, we have an informal design review for 175 Lyman Street, Woodfield Stone Yard. And they were here with us last time we met as well.
So I'll just give a brief precursor on this project. So this project was before you all for a formal review at last month's meeting. It's a Woodfield Stone Yard project at the corner of Lyman Street. Essentially, it's a multifamily residential project with commercial uses and artist studio spaces on the north elevation. The project was approved by, all right. So essentially, one of the main conditions was regarding some of the design elements that were shown on an earlier version of a color rendering that was submitted that the committee preferred to what was on the official submission. That included items such as the kind of use of the red exterior features along the west elevation of the building, the arched features under the breezeway at the corner of the courtyard. Here, the mullion configuration of some of the windows, and the applicant was amenable to incorporating those elements. And then one of the conditions was that the project return to you all as like an informal courtesy review after it had a chance to go to Planning and Zoning Commission, which it did, the November 2nd meeting, where it was approved with just one condition, which relates to one of the commercial spaces being offered at a below-market rate, which is now part of the project conditions. It will go to City Council at the December 15th meeting. So this is an opportunity for the applicant to check back in with you all, make sure the spirit of that approval and condition is incorporated in the new design, and then your feedback can be presented to City Council at the December 15th meeting. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts to that. I invite the applicant to speak at all, or I have exhibits up, the renderings, the site plans, and whatnot.
Is this
So
the old rendering?
this is the new rendering.
The new rendering?
Yep,
Can we compare it to the old one?
sure.
Yeah, it's really loud. It makes it sound like it's warmer than it is.
So this was the prior rendering, the October meeting. And, sorry. You can see a little before, I know. Before and after. And this was kind of like the inspiration image, for lack of a better word, that was submitted, and the committee picked up on a lot of those kinds of features.
If I recall, everyone's like, we like the way it looks there. And so they're altering the rendering, the computerized rendering to sort of, because it's hard to.
Right, and the elevation drawings have been updated to reflect the use of those materials, the archway, and this breezeway section of the building on the courtyard side, and then also the window mullions too. So they had incorporated, and staff felt that those design changes had been incorporated sufficiently to meet the committee's condition of approval, and therefore moved it forward to Planning and Zoning Commission, where those discussions were relayed and ultimately approved. So I don't know if you want to invite the applicant up to have any questions answered or more discussion, or.
I think it'd be helpful, since you've been able to bring both of the computer renderings up, maybe if they could just kind of walk through some of the detail, that would be helpful.
Yeah, kind of highlight what has changed from the previous version.
Okay. Yep. And there's floor plans, and then this tab also has the site plans and the elevation drawings too. If you just want to introduce yourself.
Hey, everybody. I'm Lisa with Housing Studios. Good to see you in person. And thank you for giving us an opportunity to come back to you and perfect this project a little bit for you. Okay, so what we understood and what the response to the original, what we brought to you at our last meeting, was a little harder lined, and we didn't have enough of that warmth from the weathering steel in our concept or in our design as it's developed. So what we've done is we've come back and we've tied, you can see this cursor sort of following. So we maintain the stair element, which that acts as a piece that runs the entire elevation of the building. And we brought in more of the weathering steel, and we framed the corners of the building, both the west and east corners of that building. So as you're coming either direction on Lyman, as it turns on Lyman and Lyman, you can see that weathering steel, that sort of warm texture on this corner and on that corner, but you don't see it as well in this rendering. We also brought this vertical element back in at this location, which ties this use of the brick from the site, that we're bringing that arch language back into that elevation of what is a breezeway, but also serves as an armature or a support element for a deck where people are able to mingle as part of the co-working function of this overall design. It gives people who are wanting to work remotely or have some place to go out and have a view of the landscape and the river itself. So we brought that weathering steel element back from the original concept into that too, to tie those pieces together. So really the way that we're using the weathering steel is to sort of tie these elements and the way the building undulates and the function of the building and turning corners with it. So it's a little bit more playful than what we had originally had in the design. I think is pretty successful. One thing we also did too, and I don't know if you can see it exactly, but we did increase the mullion spacing along these facades, along the storefront and window elements and fenestration on the first two levels, so that it gives more of that industrial feel, which we're hearing is, you know, sort of a continued theme in this area. And when you visit what is in the River Arts District right now, you do see a lot of these mill buildings and a lot of the older sort of turn of the century design elements, and that is one of the things that we wanted to replicate here. So we're tying back to the historic elements of the site.
And correct me if I'm wrong, if I recall, I think on the original pencil drawing, there was another stair tower that got moved based on design. So people liked that symmetry, but functionally it didn't work anymore because the design needed to change, right?
The design needed to change because in one of our previous review sessions, there was an additional access point to the garage. And that was where I had a stair, which was really great, and I could create that language. The stair had to rotate around the building. So it's one of those things you have to sort of wrestle with when designing these things. Well, it's a convenient access point for move-in and residents, and also for trash pickup. So I thought, if I can't have that stair element anymore, then I'll frame these corners and really celebrate those balconies and give that relationship to the material, and that material, that weathering steel or that texture, that color, is continued all the way around the building in a ribbon, which is essentially almost our flood elevation height.
Is the white material a fiber cement reveal system? Is it EFIS? Is it?
It's fiber cement board with reveal in the majority of this facade.
And then it looks like on the back, the reveal, it's trim instead of reveal. Does it switch?
We do have some places where we put batten just to add a little texture, because it can become a little monotonous if you have so much reveal trim. And so we this is a lot of building, and we're trying to break it up, give some shadow line.
Okay, thanks.
And I think too, can I advance to the next image in this?
If you want to scroll down, use
Yeah.
Everyone has a different language.
I know, like,
Do you want to scroll down to
next
the...
image, so I can just show,
Yeah. This one here?
yes.
Yep, yeah, you can use 2 fingers to scroll back up and down between the two if you'd like.
2 fingers to, hey.
I know, right,
Okay, I got it. All right, so because, we're bridging the gap of old to new and where we are and the language of this area and sort of the energy of this area, we felt like it was important. It was also requested that we provide some mural space, which we've done here. We're showing that in that rendering, and we're also showing how that metal comes around the corner. So you're seeing a lot of things happening. You're seeing fenestration, you're seeing brick and different coursing, you're seeing metal, a lot of good stuff happening right at that corner.
Is the
And
black
this-
metal, sorry,
Go ahead.
is the black to the left of the mural? Is
This
that-
right here?
Yeah,
That is brick.
okay,
That's a brick stair tower.
okay.
So where the mural was before was just solid block
Yeah,
wall?
just
that I remember?
solid brick. It would be brick, but we've also put in a brick patterning that replicates window.
But since the
Fenestration.
last scheme, you added the
Yes.
metal corner and the
Yes.
windows there? Or
The
were-
windows have been there.
Okay,
We wanted to go ahead and add that mural so you could really see the intent of what we're trying to accomplish here.
okay.
And if the mural doesn't happen, it's still interesting because we replicate fenestration, because at that portion of the building, there's bathrooms and closets.
Are there any other items anyone wants to see? Stephen Lee, did you have any salient things?
No, I think they were pretty much addressed last time. I know that y'all have gotten a lot of feedback from other groups as well. The River Arts District, Business Owners Association, the River Redevelopment Commission, and I know that just by talking to some other folks, y'all have gotten a lot of good feedback about this plaza in the front, and it's changing quick down there.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
quick enough.
Does anybody else have any other questions for her?
I just had a question about the brick facade with the arches.
Yes,
So is there a reason why you have those like articulations, like the column kind of?
the articulation at the top.
Yeah.
We wanted to engage that space and bring the brick, because it's a double-sided brick and we're reusing the brick from the old coal and ice building. So you can engage that when you're under that platform. Right here, you can engage under, but you can also see it up above. And so we have glass railing, and instead of just having this sort of stark glass rail, we wanted to break that form and carry it up. We didn't want to go as high because you wouldn't be able to see the river. So it gives you sort of a vignette and a way to view.
Yeah, I was curious why it doesn't like turn the corner as well. Is it like a?
In our original scheme, we were just going to maintain or hold that facade, and we wanted to just keep that same language. We were going to, at one point, we had a whole steel structure and armature that was just going to maintain that old original facade. And I think that that's sort of how we envision it. It's sort of broken out, pushed out from the building. It's its own thing. And I feel like if we turn the corner and engage it, I feel like that might be a little bit tenuous. But it's something we considered, but I still feel like that is the most poetic way of treating that material.
Does anybody else have anything?
I have a comment, but it's not about the architecture, so.
Okay.
So, but just thank you for that. That was
You're very
great.
welcome.
So I think this is a really good example, and just for consistency, since we talked about consistency, I'll bring some things up. You did a great job of hearing our feedback and going back and exploring possibilities of materials and cost, I'm sure.
Sure.
And I just want to see that same design process and sensibility applied to the site and the stormwater. And this is the perfect, in capitalization letters, opportunity, because this is new development. We're maximizing the building footprint on this property, which I'm excited about all the housing it's provided. We should be maximizing the green stormwater infrastructure. We haven't really talked about that too much, and it's not a requirement. You're meeting your requirements, but I just want to encourage you to continue to use that front garden as stormwater, because between that part of the property and the roof, you could satisfy all of your stormwater requirements, and probably at a much affordable cost, as opposed to, because you could potentially avoid your underground stormwater system. And that's a win for the project, the budget, our community, the river that this building sits on the banks of. And so this project is one project, but I think it's a missed opportunity in that we could have explored other possibilities to manage our stormwater. in meeting the goals that we have as a city in terms of our water quality and how we want to design and build things. And this, aside from a site perspective and a stormwater perspective, this is exactly what we've been doing forever, and we can't keep doing it like this.
Let me ask a potentially tough question. Is this wood construction on the podium?
It's wood above podium.
Can you put a screen roof on wood construction?
I heard that question, or not, a comment in the last meeting about it being a TPO roof on wood structure. Some of the oldest green roofs in the southeast are built like that. We built them all the time. So that's not and I know that this project is far along, but I just can't help myself. And again, it's consistency, so just making sure it's consistent.
Well, it's important to say the last piece. If it is doable on wood construction, then we in the subs and the GCs need to be educated on that.
Well, and I think that is at the spirit of my comment, is that we've explored all these things wonderfully through the architecture. We need to be doing the same thing at grade, and that every project, it's not appropriate. We just should not be putting green roofs on every single project. This is a perfect example of one because it could serve as infrastructure. It's new construction. We don't have a lot of space at grade to manage our stormwater outside of gray infrastructure. So just, it's a good opportunity.
And it's visible from the community, given the setting, and the river's right across the street. I mean, it's a delicate zone, even more so than, areas like downtown, but.
So again, I think it's just, my point is the investigation and the exploration rather than just doing things how we've always done them. Because if we did that through the architecture, the project wouldn't be as it is right now, which we're all, I think, more excited about. And so that's really generally my point.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
That's a good point. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
I do want to say we received one public comment, and it mostly was concerned with the number of parking spaces provided, and the commenter felt there were too many spaces for this particular area.
There's another comment, though, about the west side of the building facade, saying that it was devoid of any activity. But I think because of the flooding, it has to be for parking, but just wondering, I think there's a pretty wide planting strip there, and so maybe there's an opportunity as that gets further designed, that long strip could be.
You're right. Warren Sugg with Civil Design Concepts. I'll touch on a couple things. To your point and your discussion earlier, I would encourage us as a community to just have more and more education about green roofs. From a civil standpoint, I can certainly do some things, but I can't do green roofs on top of buildings unless, the whole community, wants that, and there's more to it than I understand. So I would encourage us to do continued education with architects, owners, designers, costing. I know it's a very important thing, and I know it's your business. I think we could all learn a lot from it. Specifically down to that western edge, there is a little bit of a gap there, and that is where we're tying the courtyard, public-private space, and the drainage from that will happen. But we're also tying the stormwater that's happening with the roof area. We certainly want to look at that. It will be a depressed area. I think it will serve some function of some stormwater control because there is some leftover area. There are some utilities through there as well. I don't know how formalized it will be as far as like being a true rain garden, but I think it'll function a lot like that. There is an existing pipe under old lineman that runs north-south with the river there today. I think it's a 24 inch, and then there's a 30 inch actually under the railroad. So it's one of those weird situations where you have a bigger size pipe upstream than you do downstream. But yeah, we want to certainly capitalize on that area. And thank you for the comments. I agree with you, and I think there's things that can be done. We just need to all sort of understand it and know how to work towards it.
So that planting strip on the west side that the person emailed, is there, it looks like there's some space for like under plantings. I'm just thinking of along the greenway, all those great plantings, and that maybe there's a way to incorporate some of that plant material into that planting bed. I don't know, they seem to be concerned about it just being a major pedestrian space.
You're talking about the space between the sidewalk and the building
I think
edge?
that's what they said, the west side of the building facing the Greenway and River, just wanting it to be a little bit more interesting. But, so just, there might be an opportunity.
So we certainly can look at the plantings in there. Like I said, that's the area where a lot of the stormwater is tying together as pipes. So we can look at that low area that's also going to be capturing roof drains and maybe plant it with some wetland-type plants as long
Yeah,
as we
like
knew
some
we were going to have
herbaceous
enough water to actually, survive in that area.
That would be great.
Any other questions for me from a civil standpoint?
Yeah, absolutely.
That point did come up, we did discuss that strip along the west elevation and potentially along with plantings and other opportunities along that run along the street. There could be seating, bench seating, a place for someone to just sort of take a break and engage or sit. And that was one of the things we did discuss. I just want to make sure that that was heard because we are incorporating that.
That's great, thank you.
Okay.
So that's, the next thing on the agenda is future discussion topics. Do we want to talk about green roofs in more detail?
I think that it's a great idea. Maybe we think about it for a month about what would be a great way to begin to try to introduce some examples and just some.
I don't know if this is the best setting, but I was thinking about it as he was saying. I mean, there is an opportunity. We have this large community of architects and landscape architects and developers of maybe, providing some educational sessions to the professional community. Maybe not here. We used to do design review or design development meetings with the city. Maybe they could host and have a development meeting there, and that could be a topic of,
And
hey, let's talk about green roofs. We used to have them like 2 or 3 times a year.
Yeah, and I think in addition to green roof, just innovative stormwater management as a whole, because like the swale we were just talking about on the west side, it takes a lot to make those things really function properly. It's not just
Yeah.
backfill with soil that put plants in. I mean, it's like a cake mixture, you just got to drain and all this kind of stuff. But I think it's a great idea.
I think what would be really great is the Stormwater Task Force could be, and I believe that he's on that task force, and maybe working with them. But we've talked a little bit about with an engineer who has done some of these studies to find out how do we apply it to the requirements now, because it doesn't make sense for people to do it unless it's going to get counted for stormwater. I mean, unless they just want to do it because they want to do it. But if there was a simplified way that we could look at what's required and what are the thresholds and how green roofs and green stormwater infrastructure like bioswales and rain gardens can meet those requirements, because I think that if there was more of an understanding of how to use those applications to fulfill the requirements, then they would be used a lot more. But when you start digging into it, it's confusing and you're not quite sure how to approach it, and then it's just easier to go back to what works because we all have to get our projects done.
And
So-
There's your agenda for development meeting. You need the developers there and
Yes.
you need everybody there.
Yeah.
And I think the cost, asking for my opinion, but the cost of proving that out, I know it's been
Yep.
in place for a number of years, but proving out costs of bringing out waterproofing and all these things nobody wants to continue to be guinea pig and find out, and it didn't work as well. We all fall in the hook.
Right.
So, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I agree.
But if you
I
can
think
delete
it
your
is a
underground
two-step.
storage tanks, that's a pretty big cost right there.
If it's a 1-for-1 or pretty close.
It would probably help to see some of these successful projects in person as well. Green roofs that are working.
And kind of examining in layman's terms some of the data that's coming out now. Like, what difference does it make? What are the long-term savings? What are the maintenance requirements? What's the maintenance requirements for storm tech? I mean, those things are expensive to maintain. So I think it's a great idea.
Well, unfortunately, we have a lot of great examples from other municipalities. So, Philadelphia is a great example. The reason they're highly incentivizing green stormwater infrastructure, all different types of it, is because the city is saving an enormous amount of money by prolonging their infrastructure, not having to add to it, and also water quality. And so all these places are doing it not because they want to do it, it's because there's real economic value to it and environmental value too.
I know the state of Virginia is really strict about the water quality as well. And I think there's probably more green groups going in Virginia than anywhere, aren't there? A lot of colleges, and it's not a question of if, but it's like you have to. I think it has to do with the limestone issues to the stormwater. But maybe we can talk about how best to do that.
Yeah.
And brainstorm a little bit. But
Yeah.
Thank you for.
Yeah, thank
My
you.
parking's out, so I didn't want to.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
I'll make a motion to adjourn unless there's other topics that
Is,
we'd like to
yeah,
discuss.
does anybody
Second.
else have anything? No?
We have a second.
Okay, then all in favor of adjourning?
So, just so you know. We're off the clock, right?
Yeah.
Stop recording.
Are we on?